Hi everyone, welcome to the last 2024 episode of the machining Beyond the Craft. So today I'm talking about definitely my favorite topic of them all, which is marketing. That's my background, that's my passion, of course, and specifically really like to talk about that with you, Emily. So Emily running Marketing Metal. I really like the approach of your company to the machining industry. Very much needed, first of all. Secondly, I really like anti-agency approach because I think maybe if not most, but probably majority of the shops really have some doubts when they starting to thinking about the marketing, like whether or not they need to engage with the marketing company and this marketing campaign. It's always like big commitment, and they probably have some fear about big commitments, specifically in marketing. So really like your approach. So welcome.
Thanks for having me, Const.
Absolutely. So let me start with a slightly interesting thing, I guess. So many people think that shops are very boring, but only if it's only true for people who never see them from inside. So then I think that's the way. And for me, like, metalworking is the most fascinating industry for sure, because it's basically where people and machines create complex parts, products, and pretty much everything that we use in a day-to-day life, from airplanes to the coffee grinders and things like that. So how the heck 99% of thousands of machine shops in the US have such a poor brand, such a poor online presence, and just such a poor approach to the market?
Oh man, if I only knew. I mean, I think there are a lot of reasons. You've mentioned a couple of them. Like they're hesitant to commit to something. Marketing is not a quick fix. It's a long-term investment in your company, and it's something that's like, it's really hard to tie specific results to your marketing, because there are, marketing is every touch point that any prospect or customer has with your brand. Which can be anything, it can be the interactions that they have with your team, the communications that you send them, from invoicing to contracts to, there are a million different touch points that at any given time that a prospect or a customer is going to have with your brand. And technically all of that kind of falls under marketing, so it's hard to say. With digital marketing, it's a little bit easier. That you can track if somebody came to your website through a specific blog post or a video that you did or something like that. But even still, it's hard to know, if that person saw 10 other communications that you did before that. Or companies, especially, if you don't have the marketing firepower that big companies do, it's hard to analyze that data and really tie it to specific actions that prospects take. So that's part of it, I think. Another part of it is like there's just so much information out there, so many different strategies and tactics that you can take, and most of them have nothing to do with machine shops and like really have no idea what their business is like. It's a complicated relationship. I think, again, marketing is just a really complex subject, and when you don't know anything about it, and it's not your forte and not the thing that you've been trained in, and it's going to be scary and hard to
Yeah, and I think one of the component of that, I mean, mostly most of the machine shops runs by engineers, and engineers definitely have different way of thinking about pretty much everything. And to some degree, marketing wasn't the one of the fields that they think they need to not even spend the time, but basically put some efforts, because again, they're engineers. They actually think and do a lot of the hardcore stuff, basically, with actually, machining of the parts, and marketing always comes second, maybe third or something like that. But it actually leads me to the next question, because we are definitely in the times where I think, probably because internet is a big thing now, because digital presence is important now, and competition. Obviously, competition is just basically growing every single day. Specifically, shops in the US feels this increasing competition with overseas shops, and there's a multiple different layers to that. Pricing obviously one of them. Maybe maybe one of the major one, of course. But at the same time, there's other things that that concerned, and machine shops now in US just have to find the new way of offering their services, the new way probably of communicating their values, their basically the approach on working with the customers, not only because they need to be more competitive, but because they experience competition both internally and externally, meaning internally within the country, locally, and also from outside vendors. And there's a definitely few ways that what they can change. So automation, obviously, it's in my field. It's one of the things that we do in Digifabster with the quoting. Of course, it's very, very important for sure. But also, it's a presence. It's a presence in front of the customers. It's also perception of how your customers actually think about your shop. Because again, like on the paper, a lot of the shops are similar. They use the same equipment. They have same capabilities. Even the turnaround time can be very similar. But then it's the next level after that. Like when we're thinking about the communication that those best machine shops have with their customers, also quality, also turnaround time. But how you think US-based shops can stay ahead of the game with this increasing competition that we see now?
Yeah. And even there's more competition than that because automation itself can be somewhat of a competition, and their customers can even be somewhat of, an internal machine capabilities of their customers can be a competition too. So there's endless competition, but there's also a ton of growth in the industry, a ton of growth in need for their services, especially domestically because of government secrets and all the things, right? Like there's a big push in certain industries for keeping things in the U.S. So it can be a good differentiator from that standpoint. I think the question was how can they differentiate themselves, right, from the competition. I think, as you said, like, a lot of shops do a lot of the same things. You can really differentiate yourself more with more of the human aspect of things. You talked about this a little bit with communication. Again, any touch point with your brand is, that's part of your marketing, or it should be looked at as part of your marketing. And if you're going above and beyond for customers, you're really showing what is your drive. What drives you to. Oh, my cat just jumped up here and he hasn't been joining me because he's like terrified of my fan. It's kind of funny. Anyway, there's really showing that like good old American ingenuity, like you get in and you solve problems for your customers. It's a partnership, really leaning into that partnership side of things, and the way that you do that is by like showing your personality, showing more of the faces of your business, talking again about the why, what drives you, what gets you excited to do this work, because people that are passionate and excited about their work are going to deliver better quality work. It's human nature. So I think back to something you said earlier, like people don't think that machine shops are that exciting or interesting, but they are, because they're full of people who have lives outside of machining and stories to tell. So find those stories and start telling them.
Which led me to the question about two approaches to the marketing: owner-led kind of the marketing, or founder-led marketing versus faceless marketing, because I definitely see both sides of the spectrum that shops trying to do.
Yeah.
With the different results, of course. Maybe from your experience, and again, of course, you mentioned that this human level communication is based, not only communication, but basically marketing driven things, could be the most important thing, actually, if you want to make your machine shop very different, right? So what you usually recommend to the shop, like go with like owner-led marketing or faceless marketing. And again, we need to consider that those owners could be a machinist at the same time, or estimator, whatever. They always wearing multiple hats. So what would you recommend for those shops?
Yeah, I know. Like, okay, add one more thing to my to-do list, right? Like, There are many ways to approach marketing. There is no one right way. I'm sure there are plenty of shops out there that are doing just fine without having a face that, can, actually, I think that was a different question. I'm gonna save that one. But like, there is no one right way. I'm sure there are plenty of shops that do fine without humanizing their brand, but from my experience and our radical approach that we use, we typically lean into that overdriven personal brand. To me, it's the most cost-effective and impactful strategy. Like, it's going to create a lasting impact for your brand. Instead of relying on any marketing agency to market yourself, to do the work for you, like, as soon as you stop paying them, they're going to stop doing the thing, and then you're, SOL, right? Whereas if you're the one kind of driving it and doing a lot more, kind of building the network, it really, it gives you a longer lasting impact. Like doing things like this, getting on podcasts and talking about your story and your why. And that's what's going to make you memorable. People work with people, and people don't work with people that they don't know, like, or trust. So the more that you can put your face out there and be memorable and likable, and that's gonna go a long, long way for you.
So how do you convince those owners
How do you convince them?
I mean, specifically because all of us only have 24 hours,
right? Yeah.
Which 7 or 8 of them we need to sleep anyway.
Yeah.
But how you convince them to, okay, so now from the January 1st, you have to spend like 2 hours per day to do some marketing stuff. So how you convince them?
Yeah. I don't know that you need 2 hours a day. 10 minutes a day goes a long way, like baby steps, right? And it's one of those things too that you put off when it's something that you don't want to do, right? If you're like kicking and screaming, you're not gonna take the time to sit down and do it. So there's a big mindset shift that has to happen there, and recognizing that, like, you do have something important to share. You have a ton of knowledge and experience to share. So, and people will benefit from that. Like, it's really more about the impact. Like, what kind of impact do you want to have on the world? And can you do it from, behind closed doors without showing your face? Like, probably not. Probably not as much, right? Not as much of an impact if you're hiding. So yeah, I think however you can make it get more fun for yourself, and convince yourself that it's important to do. Like, I was always somebody that wanted to hide in the background, and I was an overwhelmed entrepreneur for many, many years, and it's taken a lot of practice and to get to this point where I can just, yeah, sure, let's hop on a podcast and share it with your audience, no problem. It's taken me a long time to get to that point. To a lot of my setting small, attainable goals and reaching them, and then moving the goalposts and building on it. So yeah, it might be something that you don't want to do initially, but I think if you really give it the try that it deserves, I think you'll find that you like it more than you think you do.
Right. Right.
So who doesn't like to be recognized for their brilliance? And
sure.
Yeah.
So basically, you have to act as the personal coach to help them to change the mindset a bit.
Yes. There's a lot of coaching that we do, for sure.
I think it's important. Important. And that's something that also, like, create additional trust, which we all want. Just, on the human level, that's the most important thing, basically.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's something that you can be proud of. I mean, you can, like, I can't tell you how many people that I run into that are like, I see you all over LinkedIn, like personal relations, things like that. Like, I see you all, like, it's so cool, everything that you're doing with your brand. And, they have no idea what I actually do, and they're, like, not interested in the machining world or whatever. But maybe now they know something more about it than they did before, and that's pretty cool. Like, maybe they would consider, sending their kid to a trade school instead of college someday, or whatever. Like, you never know the impact that you're going to have on somebody. Very true.
Very true. So before you start working with with the next customer, with the next machine shops, so what usually you recommend to do for the shops, like some sort of the 3 marketing must-dos, I guess, for machine shops before they engaging with yourself as the marketing professionals. So what they can do on their own?
Yeah, good question. So if you're a brand new shop, skip marketing for now. Just skip it. Go right to the outreach. Connect with every person you know on LinkedIn and beyond, whatever social platform you're on, whatever networks you have access to, whether they be in real life or in person or online, and have your super specific 30 to 60-second pitch ready. Get really specific about what is the type of work that you want, and what is it that you can do differently. Like when you're first starting out, maybe low cost is your easiest approach, right? I'm just trying to get some experience, and I'd love an opportunity to show to prove to you that I can be a good partner. That can be a great pitch. Once you have some steady income and some insight on who your ideal customers and projects are, because before you start, you have this idea of what you think it's going to be like, but once you actually get into it and start working, you learn a lot about your capabilities and your what's good, what works and what doesn't work, all of that. So in the beginning, it's really important to just get your reps in. Get those reps in and get to know your customers, build your processes, all of that. Once you have that, then you can, that's when you start investing in marketing. And the first place to invest in your marketing is in your brand, or it's not going to, it's going to do more harm than good. Like you're going to spend a lot of money on marketing that is not effective, right? It's not communicating the right message, and that's where we come in. So, building your brand it's an ongoing process, but before it can really start driving results for you, driving the right kinds of leads to your business, it needs to position your shop as the ideal partner for the type of customer that you want to work with, right? And then from there, you really want to start focusing on like getting in front of those prospects and turning them into raving fans. But to get to that point, you really have to start with the brand. Like, what do you want your brand to be communicating with the world? Not just from a capabilities and equipment standpoint, but from a human standpoint. Like, what are the values? How do the values play out in your day-to-day? Not just listing like integrity. And those things are important, but also how does that stuff play out in your day-to-day, right?
Yeah, really like your first point, because that's remind me something. So especially when you just starting the machine shop or pretty much any business, and you kind of have to build the case first and build the trust with the customers and just basically build your name, not even as the brand, not even as a company, just as a person, the person who other people can trust. And it looks like that the best approach is really to do something unexpected. And what I mean by that, so for example, I don't know, you find some person, some potential customer LinkedIn, they are maybe in a different city or something like that, but they need to get some work done, by tomorrow, by whatever, some, urgent deadline or something like that. And if you can really accomplish something that this customer is not expecting at all, that, some random person can deliver, that's something that can actually create a success story for you, like the very first success story, doing something very unexpected from the customer perspective. So that's something that builds, those things and, some sort of foundation for, future success. So I just heard many stories like that. I've been obviously involved in that too. Like when I deliver very, very first to my customer, of course, personally, again, it was like 12 years ago when we ran in the shop or something like that. So for customer, it was unexpected that I myself like delivering, and of course asking about the feedback, about everything. And it was, I think, an expected hour, like 9 p.m. or something like that. So I guess that's how those stories, come from. So I think that's important, just extremely important. Yeah. So once you kind of cross that bridge where, okay, so we have some traction, you hit some traction as a machine shop, so we have some orders. So what's the point where it does make sense to reach out to any marketing professional and starting building and starting actually committing some marketing activities? So what's your ideal type of the machine shop stage of development, I guess, where your help is really meaningful and make a big impact for them?
Yeah. There's an old saying, like, the best time to invest in your marketing is when you don't need it. So when you're doing relatively well, you're not hurting for leads, but you're more looking for building some sustainability and growth, looking to make a bigger impact. You've proven that you can make this business a lasting success. You've been doing it for a few years. Maybe you have some employees. And with all of that comes more costs, more overhead. So you have to make sure that you have leads coming in to be able to keep all of that running and grow on top of that. So that's usually where we can make the biggest impact. I say it's usually like it's a legacy business that there's a younger generation taking over, or somebody buying the shop and they're breathing new life into things. They're updating equipment, updating technology, maybe hiring, doing some personnel things, investing in like leadership coaching or those types of areas. That's a great scenario for us. Another great scenario is the shop owner who started in their garage with one machine, and have built it, organically. They've grown and been able to expand and hire employees, and their shop looks a lot different from what it did 10 years ago, right? Or 5 years ago. They've had a lot of success just in word of mouth, but they're stretched thin as the more people you have, the more time you have to spend with them and all of that. So the less time probably that you have to spend on sales and marketing, which is obviously an important piece. So that's where you can start to invest in some marketing to drive those leads for you, to do some of that heavy lifting for you.
Yeah, I mean, my experience was absolutely the same. So it's definitely for the first at least couple of years, you definitely need to push this basically founder-led marketing. Not only because it's cost-effective, because it's only your time, kind of, but also because this can actually create the foundation for, your brand, right? Your brand and your language, your message, your values, everything, like the basically feel of your machine shop. And this couldn't be created artificially. This must be you. Just you, yourself, and your with all your personality, I think. So that's important stage where you're building this foundation yourself. Again, you just have to dedicate the time for that. And once you reach some of the stage where it looks like you hit some traction, it looks like things starting to moving to the right direction. So that's ideal stage where you just want to kind of scale up things. Good point to reach out to you, of course, and starting to build it slightly more, I guess, broadly from the marketing perspective. So yeah, I think it's very resonate with a lot of the shops that we're working with, because again, we work with both super small moms and pop shops that not all of them, of course, have good sense of urgency when it comes to the marketing, but they have to. The best one definitely have this feel, and also founders are definitely understand why they need to do marketing. It's not someone push them to do that. It's themselves that they completely understand why they do that.
Yeah.
So, and yeah, of course, large shops, different story, but at the same time, in a lot of the cases, it's legacy shop that just need to be sort of reshaped, I guess, to be different now, because again, it's increased competition with very different shops now that communicate very, very nice things to the customers that they want to hear, of course. So you have to kind of find your approach in that. So that's important, I guess. And with that, how often do you help customers to sort of work on the marketing message that help them to compete with the marketplaces like Xometry, like Protolabs, like many others that we have? Because it's a different business model. It's a different customer base. Not all the machine shops just want to or have to compete with Xometry and the marketplaces like that. But how often do you see that in your practice?
Yeah, there are probably lots of shops out there that do just fine taking work off these platforms, right? They maybe have built some processes around it and that can make it efficient and effective. But in my experience and the shops that I've worked with, you're not going to find the best customers from Xometry and these Protolabs, right? Like, the best customers want a partnership. They want an ongoing long-term relationship, not a transactional one-time deal, which is what Xometry and Proto Labs really is providing, right? So it's, they could help in getting those reps in and giving you that experience, right? If you're, if you want to sign up and try to get some work off those platforms, but really building the brand, building a brand that's strong, putting out a marketing that attracts the right types of customers and doing the work to build up that foundation, that's going to be better for you in the long run to attract more of those ideal customers that are more long-term partners for you.
Right. So talking about that, again, you of course working with very different shops, and as I mentioned in the beginning, a lot of the shops really have some sort of the fear working with a marketing agency, with advertising agencies and stuff like that. So again, your approach is different, like anti-agency approach. So what do you think? I mean, I definitely understand what shops attract, in this approach. It's definitely different to all the traditional marketing, and also it looks like that you providing, kind of the different tiers of the levels, because again you work with the different customers from moms and pop shops, because again, so it's not a lot of the marketing agencies that really want to work with moms and pop shops. And even by work, I mean starting to build relationship really before you even starting to having some agreement contracts and stuff like that. So what do you think shops that working with you finding in your approach is very different, and why they actually want to try that? So what's this kind of the recipe for that?
I mean, I love this question. We are the anti-agency because I came from the agency. That's not true. I was the one and only marketing person at a number of small shops throughout my career. I did work for an agency for a year, less than a year. It was a short stint, but and we had a couple of manufacturing, job shop customers. Actually, one of my longest time customers came from that because this agency ended up closing. And I also when I was the internal marketing person, I worked with external agencies. I was managing the external agency that we were their customer. And there's just such a huge disconnect with them. From an interest standpoint, I think, again, there's not a lot of commonality there between the typical agency and a typical job shop. So they don't have much in common. There's that. That's an issue from the start. But they're not speaking the same languages. They don't understand each other or really fully appreciate each other. So those are some of the biggest hurdles that I was trying to overcome when I started really focusing on job shops. I just really recognized the need for, a need for great marketing, for them to be looked at as, a serious, cool business that's doing really cool stuff. I think there's a lot to it, I guess, of why we're the anti-agency and why it works. I think, job shops are a super unique type of business. They, most of them need a handful of new customers a year to make their whole year. The kind of spray and pray approach of a lot of agencies just doesn't work. It's focused on, on quantity over quality. And so you're just throwing money at the wall and, expecting it to multiply for you, and it doesn't really work. So I think the way that we approach it is a lot different. We're really focused on the humans behind the company. Again, what drives them, what are their values, how does that play out, who are the types of customers that they work well with, why, all of the things. I think our process is definitely a huge thing that sets us apart. I think one of the issues with the traditional agency model is they're just kind of paying monthly into the abyss for data charts that get emailed to you every month that they don't really understand what they mean or how they're related to their bottom line or whatever. There's it just didn't work. It wasn't working for them. So we kind of flipped it on its head, and we really started with the brand. We call it the build out is our brand build process. We do it fast and furious. It's like I come from manufacturing. My husband's a manufacturing engineer. My sister is a process engineer. I'm very process oriented. Very efficiency is really important, but also quality is extremely important. I just appointed a quality lead to our How many marketing agencies do you know that have a quality lead? That they don't.
Yeah.
So like it's just really taking a different view of the process, creating a process that works. It's fast, it is fun, it's makes the best use of the shop owner's time, because back to the whole, like, they're wearing a million hats and they don't have time in their, in their day to constantly be responding to emails and, hand holding some rookie marketer that doesn't understand anything about manufacturing. So yeah, we just re-engineered the process, really, and it works really well.
It's great. It's great. That's why, again, I came from the sort of the agency side of the business in marketing like many years ago. So definitely learned through this experience working with a very different customers, from the banks to the travel agency, all of that, where spray and pray approach is like very typical, of course. And when we started Digifabster many years ago, of course, many customers approach us like not only to buy our software, but also like, okay, so guys, can you help us with, some marketing, at least some tips and tricks on what's usually work or not. And yeah, obviously we quickly realized that marketing in machining is very, very different again. And I really love your point about, this human brand, where it's not just machine shop, it's the owner with his own personality, that he is the brand himself for this machine shop, and all the knowledges, all the experience, everything that he have needs to be extracted from them and exposed to basically to their customers, because that's how you show not only your expertise, but also that's the way to build the trust, because again, you're transparent, you also a little bit vulnerable,
Yes.
probably, and that's important.
Vulnerability is huge. The more
Yeah.
vulnerable, my most engaged post, the post on LinkedIn that did the best, like far beyond anything else that I did this year, was like basically me saying the first half of the year was absolute dog shit, and I've been hiding in my cocoon and not, like I can't remember the whole context of the post, but it was like very vulnerable, very like I have been hiding basically for that, and it, because I had been using this process that I teach our customers of building content and scheduling it ahead of time. Like nobody even noticed because my content was going out anyway. But I put this post out of what I was going through, and that did a million times better than anything else because it was super vulnerable, and people aren't, not a lot of people are brave enough to do that in a public setting, and that sets you apart.
Yes, it's indeed true. And again, this is the very opposite to what we see in Instagram or any other social networks. And
Yeah.
and again, but it's help you to show you human side of you, right?
Yeah.
And people just want it. People really want to be surrounded by the people that were not vulnerable, and also like really have bravery to share that.
Yeah.
Because it's not given. It's not something that everyone want to do for, of course, obvious reasons. No. But once you do that, you can clearly see, okay, that so many people actually like that. Not only they want to hear that, but of course they experience pretty much the same thing through the business, life, whatever. Yeah, so it's really cool that we now see this type of thing more and more. I guess I starting to see this thing on X first, well, in Twitter first, maybe a couple years ago, when people starting finally like, sharing what's actually going on, not just this shiny, nice pictures and stuff in Instagram, and same with LinkedIn now. So
yeah,
it's good. It's good for everything. It's good for people brains as well, because you want to see like the real world. Yeah, with all the complications, with all the ups and downs and things like that. So that's important. That's really important. And one of the things that I think would be extremely great to have, and again, because one of the reasons why, of course, I wanted to have a podcast with you, with all your experience working with, specifically working with the machinists and machine shops. So I would love to have the webinar, for machinists, specifically focused on the on the topics that not only practical, but also like extremely shaped to the machine shops, and specifically to help them to change the mindset, because I think that's pretty much the most important thing before you even start into thinking about marketing, because you overwhelmed with all the information that you can find, about all the advertising and everything. But before that, right before that, you have to change your mindset. And I think that's the most practical webinar that we can have around this practices of how you're changing the mindset, and of course sharing some examples of, okay, so I did that, and then look what happened, basically.
Yeah.
So I think that's extremely important, because again, we can obviously go for like many tips and tricks, like very specific one specifically to the marketing channels and all of that. But really before that, I know for certain many people just stuck in the stage where maybe they want to do the marketing, but they just can't allow themselves to do that. Not even because of the budget, but because they not sure, they overwhelmed, and I think they have a fear that other people, the audience, just don't want to listen to them, don't want to listen to what they want to do, and sharing their expertise is just too much for them because they're not sure that they're good enough.
Yeah.
So I would love to focus on that.
That would be amazing. Yeah, it's my favorite topic. I mean, it's terrifying to put yourself out there. It's for everyone.
Yes.
Even like theater kids, maybe a little bit less than, but to put your own story out there and your own vulnerability and your own dreams for your shop and your vision and ideas of how the world should work, all that, like, it's terrifying to put yourself out there like that. It definitely takes some mindset shift to to get started even, but to keep going, and it's a constant evolution of the mindset. Like, I'm constantly working on my mindset, even 3 years in, even having done all of the crazy things cool things that I've done. Like, I spoke at FabTech twice, getting on shows like this, getting on the Fabricator podcast. I was their first repeat guest. I was pretty excited about that. Even doing all of that, like, I still go into my hole sometimes in my cocoon and hide out for a while and then, emerge renewed. We all go through phases in life. So,
Absolutely.
yeah, I think a mindset webinar would be great.
Awesome. So we will make some announcement for sure, probably after the Christmas. Of course, we all need to get back into our cocoon for maybe a day or two or something. It's necessary thing for sure for just recharging and everything, and we really need to be in presence to actually recharge, and that's the hardest thing to do, but yeah, we have to, for sure.
We have to, and so many of us in manufacturing specifically, we're so, we've been raised to be hard chargers and like go-getters, and it's great, but we also need to take time for rest. I'm pretty proud that this is the first year that I will ever take 2 full weeks off at the holidays.
Awesome.
I'm so excited.
That's perfect. That's great. It's the great thing to hear, for sure.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, lovely. Thank you so much, Emily. It was big pleasure. Thank you so much. And yeah, it was super great to talk to you.
Yeah, you as well. Thanks, Const.
Thank you so much.